Digital identity. This is one of those topics that sounds boring on the surface, like, oh great, another way to log into things. But the more you dig into it, the more you realize this might be the one of the most important pieces of technology that we build in the next decade. And here's the thing, it's actually happening right now, whether you know it or not. So in this video, I want to break down what digital ID actually is, why it matters, and why the way we build it could either solve some massive problems or, create some even bigger ones. Let's talk about it.
Let's establish why we're even talking about this. Right now, there are about 850 million people on Earth who don't have any form of legal identification. No birth certificate, no passport, no driver's license, nothing. And when you don't have ID, you basically can't participate in modern society. You can't open a bank account, you can't get a job, you can't vote. Honestly, you're functionally invisible to the system. And that's a massive problem. And solving it is actually one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. But even for those of us who do have identification, the current system it's not great. Every time you log into something, your bank, your email, a government website, you're trusting that that service stores and protects your digital ID.
And right now, most of that information lives in a centralized database. Big servers, usually owned by government or corporations. And those hold millions and billions of people's data all in one place. And that creates two major problems. First, security. Centralized databases are massive targets for hackers. Take India's Aadhaar system. It's the largest biometric database in the world. Over 1 billion people, all with their fingerprint, iris scans, and addresses stored in one system. In 2018, hackers got in. All of it was exposed. Over 1 billion records compromised in a single breach. And this keeps happening. Equifax, the UK's NHS government databases around the world, whenever you concentrate that much valuable data in one place, you create what security experts call a honeypot.
One lock, one key, one catastrophic point of failure. Here's problem number 2, control. But even when the system works perfectly and doesn't get breached, there's still another issue, control. When someone else holds your identity as data, they control how you use it. They control who sees it, they control the access, and in some places, that control becomes a tool for surveillance. China's digital ID system is probably the most extreme example I could give you. Your digital identity is linked to a social credit score, and that score affects everything. Where you can travel, what you can buy, and even where your kids can go to school. Every transaction is tracked. Every behavior is monitored. And get this, the scary part, the technology to do this exists everywhere. It's just a question of how's it going to be used.
So this is where decentralized ID comes in. And the core idea is actually pretty simple. Instead of trusting a government or a company to hold your identity data, you hold it. It's on your phone in a digital wallet. And you control what you share and who you share it to. So the way it works is, in a decentralized system, you have what are called verifiable credentials. Think of them like digital versions of your physical documents, your driver's license, your diploma, your bank statement, but they're cryptographically signed by whoever issued them. So your driver's license credential is signed by the DMV, your diploma is signed by your university. These can't be forged. But the part that I think is kind of cool is that you don't have to share the whole thing. Let's say you need to prove that you're 21 because you're going to a bar. With a traditional ID, you show your driver's license and the bouncer gets to see your full name, your address, your exact date of birth, a photo, all of it. But with a decentralized ID, using something called zero knowledge proofs, you can prove you're over 21 without revealing any of that information. The system just confirms, yes, this person is over 21, verified by the DMV. That's it.
No unnecessary data shared, no tracking, no central database logging where you went or what you did. Now, you're probably asking yourself, why does this matter? Or even better yet, why is this better? Well, let me get at you with this. There's no central honeypot to hack. Your credentials are on your device, okay? Encrypted, and only you have access to them. Now, number two, privacy. You're sharing the minimum information necessary, nothing more. They don't need to know where you live. They don't need to know, the color of your eyes. They don't need to know any of that. They just need to know that you're over 21. And here's the third one, control. You decide what to share, when to share it, and who sees it. No one else has that control but you. And fourth, inclusion. For those 850 million people without IDs, this could be really life-changing. Decentralized systems can work in places where traditional infrastructure just doesn't exist. You don't need a massive government database. You just need a phone and internet access. That's it.
The economic impact and the numbers here are kind of insane. Some economists estimate that bringing digital identity to unidentified populations could add 6 trillion to global GDP. That's from people suddenly being able to open bank accounts, start business, access credit, basically participate in the formal economy. And third world countries or countries that are under development, the efficiency gains are also huge. Digital ID could save billions of hours in bureaucratic processes, instant verification instead of waiting weeks for documents, just like Estonia. India, despite the security issues with Aadhaar, used their systems to deliver emergency payments to 200 million people during the pandemic, women who'd never had bank accounts before. So the potential here is massive.
But here's the catch. Okay, so decentralized digital ID sounds amazing, right? And in a lot of ways, it is. But there are some serious issues we need to talk about because technology is only as good as how it's implemented. And how it's implemented depends on who's building it, who's funding it, and who really has the power in the system.
Let's talk about refugees. Not Donald Trump, ICE refugees, but when you're a refugee seeking aid, you're often required to provide biometrics data, fingerprints, iris scans, photos, just to get access to food, shelter, medical care. Technically, it's voluntary. Nobody's forcing you, right? But if the alternative is starvation, is that really a choice? This is what researchers call a forced choice. The system offers an option to opt out, but opting out means opting out of survival. And this isn't just a refugee issue. Even in developed countries, digital ID might not be legally mandatory, but it could become functionally mandatory. Can't board a plane without it, can't access healthcare without it, can't open a bank account. You're not forced to participate, you're just unable to live a normal life without it.
Here's a real example from Uganda. Aid organizations wanted to empower women. So they designated them as heads of households for aid payments. Women would receive the money directly, giving them financial independence. That sounds good, right? Domestic violence rates spiked through the roof. The system just didn't account for existing power dynamics in relationships in that region. Men, they just felt emasculated, and they took it out on their partners. Now, that's not something you want to see, do you? So the system imposed a structure that made sense on paper, but in reality, it broke families. It could break families across the world depending on which culture you're taking a look at. So this is the real danger of treating identity as solely a technical problem, when it's actually a technical problem and a social problem. People aren't just data points singularly. Context really does matter. Culture matters. It all matters.
Well, in a lot of developing countries, digital ID infrastructure is being built and funded by external organizations. the World Bank, Western tech companies, NGOs. On the surface, it looks like aid, but in practice, it creates dependency. Foreign corporations control the infrastructure, they have access to the data, and the countries being helped often have very little to say in how the system works. This is what some researchers are calling digital colonialism, the extraction of data and control under the guise of development. And also there's a power problem, but I'll let Rich explain that part.
And here's the biggest issue. Decentralization solves the surveillance problem, but it doesn't solve the power problem. Because someone still has to issue these credentials. Someone still decides who gets them and who doesn't. And digital systems are programmable. Your credentials can have conditions. They can be revoked, they can be throttled. You didn't pay a fine, credentials suspended. Government doesn't like your politics, technical difficulties, please try again. Can't access my bank account. Take a look at what happened in Canada with the truckers. The systems might be decentralized, but if the gatekeepers still control access, you haven't really solved the problem. All you simply have done is just moved it.
What does good implementation actually look like? Privacy can't be an optional feature. It has to be built into the foundation. That means zero knowledge proofs, unlinkable credentials, distributed architecture, all of it from day one. The EU actually just mandated this in their new digital ID regulation. By law, digital wallets have to use privacy-preserving techniques so that you can't be tracked across different services. That's the kind of regulatory framework we need.
And here's the second principle. I call it separation of powers. The entities that verify your physical ID should be completely separate from the entities that issue your digital credentials. And now you might be asking, why is that, Rich? Because if one organization controls both, they just have too much power. Separation creates checks and balances. It's harder to abuse a system when you have to coordinate between multiple actors who are independent.
Definitely. When something goes wrong, when someone uses fake credentials or commits fraud, we need to be able to trace it. But tracing one bad actor shouldn't require building a surveillance database of everyone else. This is technically possible. It's just harder than the easy centralized approach. And also, systems should be designed for the most vulnerable users first, not as an afterthought.
Nigeria, for example, is prioritizing digital ID for internally displaced persons. People who have nothing, no documents, no proof of existence.
Togo used their existing voter ID system to deliver pandemic crash transfers, and they made sure 65% of recipients were women. These aren't perfect systems, but they show that inclusion can be a priority if you decide to make it one. But the juicy part, the architecture that actually works. The architecture that actually works. So let us get more technical here because the implementation details really matter. There's this new architecture called DigiDAO that's pretty fascinating. It combines all the privacy tech we've been talking about, the PIAs, the verifiable credentials, the zero knowledge proofs, but routes everything through Tor. Yeah, Tor, the anonymous browser network. Why? Because even with all these fancy cryptographic protections, if someone can see where your data is going, they can still track you. Metadata is still data.
Here's another cool concept. Instead of storing everything on your phone, which, let's be honest, you could lose, you could break, ooh. You have what's called a personal identity agent, or PIA. Think of it like your own personal identity server. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's still under your control, but it's not physically on your device. You can access it from anywhere, recover it if something goes wrong, but nobody else could touch it, at least not without your permission. It's like having your own personal cloud, but it's actually secure. And here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Trust is expensive. Right now, banks spend billions on KYC. And what does that mean? KYC, know your customer, compliance, governments. Governments spend billions verifying documents. Companies spend billions on fraud prevention. Companies spend money to get you to trust them. Digital ID could eliminate most of these costs. Instant cryptographic verification instead of manual processes.
And we're talking about savings the equivalent of 3 to 6% of GDP. In the US alone, that's over $1 trillion. That's not just efficiency, that's transformative. Who's actually building this?
Here's where things get interesting for the 5,000th time. This isn't just theoretical anymore. Countries are racing to implement digital ID systems right now. Estonia's been doing this for 20 years. Every citizen has a digital ID that's legally equivalent to their physical passport. They could vote online, they could sign contracts, they could access healthcare, everything. And they've never had a major breach.
Zadar, despite its problems, has connected over 1 billion people. They're processing 100 million authentication requests per day. The EU is rolling out digital wallet to all 450 million citizens by 2026. 2026! And they're mandating privacy protections by law. Even the US is finally moving. Several states are piloting digital driver's licenses. The TSA is starting to accept them at airports. The geopolitical stakes. Whoever builds the dominant digital ID system sets the rules for the digital economy. Think about it. If China's model wins, centralized surveillance, social credit linked, that becomes the global standard. If the EU's privacy first model wins, we get strong protections but maybe slower innovation. If Silicon Valley builds it, we get slick apps but probably more data harvesting. This isn't just about technology, it's about what kind of future we want to live in.
Let me paint you a picture of how badly this could really go. Imagine your digital ID gets compromised. Not just your password, your actual identity. Your actual identity. The cryptographic keys that prove that you are who you are. Now, you can't access your bank accounts. You can't prove you own your own house. You can't get healthcare. You can't even prove you exist. And everything is digital. And that's the reason for the problem. There's no paper backup, no physical documents to fall back on. Honestly, you're digitally dead. So here's another scenario. The permission society. Your digital ID works fine, but it has conditions. So let's say you protested something. Maybe you missed a payment. Maybe you just posted something the wrong person didn't like. Then suddenly your credentials stop working.
But not everywhere. That would be too obvious. Just selective failures. Can't book that flight, credit application denied, job interview mysteriously canceled. No, you're not in prison. You're just restricted. Soft coercion through technical means. Kind of like subtle racism, if you know, you know.
And what happens when countries start weaponizing digital ID? Imagine cyber warfare that doesn't target infrastructure. It just targets identification, mass credential revocation, identities spoofing at scale, entire populations suddenly unable to prove who they are. It's not science fiction. The technology to do this will exist. The question is whether we build safeguards before it's even too late.
Well, after all this, the promise, the problems, the potential disasters, what do we actually do?
First, we need to acknowledge that digital ID is coming whether we like it or not. The efficiency gains are just too big. The inclusion potential is just too important. The momentum is unstoppable, but we still have a window to shape how it's built. So here are the non-negotiables. Here's what absolutely cannot be negotiated.
Privacy must be protected by design and by law. Not promises, not policies, mathematical guarantees and legal requirements. 2, no single entity should control the system. Not governments, not corporations, true decentralization with checks and balances.
And 3, inclusion can't just be an afterthought. The system must work for everyone. Refugees, the undocumented, the marginalized groups. If it doesn't, then it just fails on its fundamental purpose. And here's number 4. There must be fallbacks, physical alternatives, manual overrides, human intervention when the system fails. And here's the thing. This isn't just up to technologists and politicians. We need informed citizens who understand these systems, who demand transparency, who refuse to accept surveillance as the price of convenience. Because ultimately, guys, these systems will only be as good as we demand them to be.
There's 2 paths here. We're sleepwalking into a surveillance dystopia. Digital ID becomes a tool of control, exclusion, and oppression. The technology that was supposed to liberate us becomes our digital prison. Path 2. We could build something revolutionary, a system that empowers individuals, protects privacy, enables inclusion, and unlocks trillions in economic value. Digital ID becomes the foundation of a more equitable, efficient, and free society. The technology for both paths exists today. The only difference is the choice we make in implementing it. The clock is ticking. And here's the urgency. These decisions are being made right now. While you're focused on different shootings, different political agendas, different things and events happening, you're not really focusing on digital ID. It is not in some distant future. It's here today. Governments are writing regulations. Companies are building infrastructure. Standards are being set. Once these systems are in place, they're almost impossible to change. The architecture becomes destiny.
Look, we're not here to tell you digital ID is good or bad. It's both. It's neither. It's a tool, but it's a tool that will reshape society as fundamentally as the internet did, maybe more. And unlike the internet, where we could kind of just figure things out as we went along, we can see the pitfalls of digital ID coming. We know the risks. We understand the stakes. But the question is this: will we learn from our mistakes, or will we make entirely new ones? Because there's one thing that's for sure. Whether we participate in the conversation or not, digital ID is coming. And the version we get will heavily depend on who's paying attention. Are you paying attention?